Okay, well, I think let's get started. Hello and welcome to everybody who's joining this call on our first Tuesdays for Climate series here at SCCAN. The topic today, as you know, is how to avoid common mistakes of community organizations. So I'm really glad that so many of you have managed to join. There might still be a few more people joining as we speak. So I just wanted to say a couple of things about the topic in general, and then run you quickly through the agenda and introduce our speakers to you. And then let's do a little round of introductions for everyone so we know who's here on the call, because that's the nice thing about Zoom, we can actually see each other and talk to each other. So I really want this to be an interactive session where people can take part and, you know, ask your questions or make any comments that you feel are relevant. So feel free to join in whenever you have something to say. So the focus of today's session is not so much on the actual legal setting up set up questions of an organization, but of how we can get positive community action going. So in the form of sort of, you know, that could be either grant projects, publicly funded projects, community funded projects, or indeed income generating activities. So that is more of a commercial approach. So creating a new activity or project may come at the beginning of your organization when you've just started up, or it might come further down the line when you've already been active for a few years or months. So it could be at any time really, and it usually comes out when there's some kind of societal need that you feel needs to be tackled, or indeed it could also be a financial need of the organization, which, you know, comes out as something that needs to be dealt with. Of course, there's societal need, you know, whether it's, you know, climate change or now the plastic crisis. It should be the dominating, should be the primordial objective of any activity or project. But, you know, in reality, the reality of things is that organizations also need to run, and for that there are financial needs. So that there could be an underlying financial need as well. Now, if we do something for the first time, it can take us more time, more energy, it could cost more than if we'd done it before. So when we have actually experience on something, we can optimize the processes, resources, and just time and effort that we put into things. And so one of the tools that can help us avoid mistakes is learning from people who have actually walked the path before and who've done it before us. So the Community Learning Exchange is a program by the Scottish Government which can help us to do exactly that. And so our first speaker that we have here today is Amanda Cornish from the Scottish Community Alliance, who will explain all the details of the CLA. But let me pass the word to Amanda just to introduce herself briefly, and then we move forward.
Hello everyone, I'm Amanda Cornish and I work for the Scottish Community Alliance, of which SCCAN is a member. There are about 15 members of the SCA and SCCAN is one of the members. I manage a funding program called the Community Learning Exchange, which I'm going to talk more about during the seminar.
All right, thanks so much, Amanda. Then we also wanted to share a couple of experiences of people who have actually used the Community Learning Exchange with you. So the first one is from the chair of SCCAN and also a board member of Sustaining Dunbar, Revell. So if you could just say hi to everyone.
Hello, yes, hi, yes, as Katharina says, I'm currently convener of the Scottish Communities Climate Action Network, and I'm a volunteer on the board of Sustaining Dunbar. So shall I pass on to somebody else, Katharina? Shall I pass on to Iiain?
Iiain, yes, because I saw you were walking about, Iiain, so I wanted to give you just a second until you found a comfortable spot.
I've just moved to a more comfortable area.
Yes, brilliant. So Iiain, could you just say a few words, because you also used the CLE, as we call it for short, Community Learning Exchange. Can you just say a few words about yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Iiain Stewart. I'm the director of the Edinburgh Interfaith Association.
And you're going to tell us more about how you use the
Learning
Learning Exchange in a minute.
Sure.
So great. So after we've gone through the experiences, then we've got some time for questions, answers, any comments that you would like to make, everyone who's on the call here today. And that will round up our short hour of that we have together here. I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Katerina Bouchard, and I'm also working at SCAN, the Scottish Communities Climate Action Network. I work on communications and also member engagement. So glad to be here, and I suggest that we just do a little introduction for everyone else who hasn't spoken yet, because it's just a few people that have introduced themselves now. So if I start, perhaps I see Karen on the call. Karen, could you just introduce yourself a little bit, whether you're affiliated to any climate or environmentally related organization, and yeah, why you are here today. Karen, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Karen. I'm the Chief Officer at Abundant Borders. We're essentially a food poverty, food insecurity initiative, but we train people using permaculture initiatives. And so we're, I suppose, depending on the perspective, we're either tangentially or crucially involved in climate change.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much. Do you want to pass on to somebody who hasn't introduced themselves yet, please? Can you see the name at the top of your screen? You should be able to see the people who are on the call.
No, I'm only seeing you, Katerina.
All right, okay. So I'll pass on for you if that's okay. I'll pass on to Iiain then.
Yes, of course.
Iiain, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Hi, sorry, I'm not sure how to use this process very well. Hi, I'm Iiain. I'm up in the Shetland Isles. My work is with the Climate Challenge Fund project. We work with people in fuel poverty to encourage them to reduce their footprint in their homes. But outside of work, I'm also in the process of setting up a group to try and encourage more people in the community to get involved in the conversation around the climate, which is proving difficult.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Iiain. I don't know if you can you see the other participants in the call? Can you pass on to somebody?
I can. Do I just press them?
You can just say the name and then they can introduce themselves.
Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah. Phil, let's hear from you.
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Phil. I work for Recycle Bike in Stirling, but I'm also chair of an organisation called the Iiain Hill Community Garden, and that's kind of where I'm coming from here. We're in the early stages of setting up a food growing and food poverty project in the local area where I live.
Great, thanks so much for that, Phil. Can you pass on to somebody? Can you see the participants?
Yeah, how about Lorraine?
Hi, it just takes me almost a moment to unmute my speaker. But hello everybody, my name's Lorraine and we work on a permaculture land centre, which I guess is working as a sort of a climate action, and we always have a lot of volunteers and young people who are quite often in transition that we sort of educate and skill up in sustainability. We have a school garden project and wind farm money that we're trying to apply for to create a peace garden, which is really a permaculture garden but with a more acceptable name in the school. And also there's community land available in our village, so I'm part of a group that are trying to take that from our local authority, who they're willing to give it to us, but we just have to prove that we'll use it for good use. And that's probably me.
Great, thanks so much.
Oh, hang on.
Do you want to pass on?
Hang on, I'll give you someone. I don't know who we've had and not had. Have we had Amanda?
Amanda has introduced herself, yeah, but Terry.
I came in late. What about? Okay, well that sounds great. Terry, let's go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if I take this off, you probably can see me as well.
Yes, now I can see you. Hi, nice to see you.
I'm Terry. I'm setting up a tool library in Cumbernauld. So I'm here to find out more about community organisations.
Great. Thanks so much for that. I think apart from Alan from Keep Scotland Beautiful, I think everyone has introduced themselves. So I'll just, because Alan says, I don't know if you can see it on the group chat, that he doesn't have a microphone or a camera. So I'll just introduce him for you all. So Alan works for Keep Scotland Beautiful on the Climate Challenge Fund, and he would like to see if there's anything that he can learn to help his CCF funded communities. So he can only take messages, or basically messages through the chat, because he's not able to speak. So it's a silent participant, but he is there. Okay, well, great. I think, there's somebody, that I have somebody just with a phone number. I don't know who you are. I can just say the phone number, 447743072068. Can you introduce yourself as well?
Sorry, Katrina, I think this is Easter. I think I might have dialed in twice.
Ah, right, okay. Okay, then if we've got you then. Ah, right, okay, so you're there twice somehow. Okay, yeah. That's fine then. So I didn't want to let you go unnoticed. Okay, wonderful. Well, then if we've introduced ourselves, then I suggest let's get started. Amanda, can you tell us all about the Community Learning Exchange, please?
Certainly. Katrina, I think you're going to put up a...
Yes, a presentation. Let me just share that with everyone.
I'd like to say thank you to Katerina for inviting me to take part in this seminar, and I hope you find it interesting. For reasons that are to do with my technology at my end, I'm unable to move the pages along, so Katerina will be doing that for me. To repeat myself, I'm Amanda Cornish and I coordinate the Community Learning Exchange, and I work for the Scottish Community Alliance, who manages this Scottish Government funded programme. Katrina, can we go to the next page?
Yeah, can everyone see the presentation, just to double check the technicalities? Yeah? Okay, yeah. Thumbs up? Okay, wonderful.
It is a learning opportunity for community groups. And to echo Katrina's theme for this seminar, it's an opportunity for one community group to visit another. And although we put the object as to increase capacity through shared learning and experience, it's also an opportunity for you to learn from other people's experiences, and sometimes that learning might be what roads not to go down. I actually had one applicant for this funding who was rather, when I said, how did it go? They were a bit shamefaced and said, actually, we decided not to do this particular project after we visited the organisation. And I said, no, that's a good result, because you can imagine the time and money and effort that might have gone into following a project. And then you might get, 2/3 down the road, you might have got funding and then realize it's really not for us. So this is a good way of scoping whether you want to do something, whether you don't want to do something, and what you can learn along the way. You can learn from other people's experiences. I'd also like to say it's realistically funded and it has proportionate administration. And I'll go on to talk about that. Katrina, if you can. It's about peer-to-peer learning. So it's very much about one community organisation visiting another and experiencing, benefiting from the experience. It's also about making new contacts and seeing different perspectives. And it's actually quite interesting how many of our applicants or beneficiaries actually maintain that relationship with their host organisation. So it's not a one-off. It can lead to other things. It's a good networking opportunity. So it's more than just, or should be more than just, a one-off visit to another organisation. Again, Katrina? Mm-hmm. This is actually quite an important part. It's open to any member of SCCAN, of the Scottish Communities Climate Action Network. and that's through SCCAN's membership of the Scottish Community Alliance. The reason that we need this, I wouldn't call it endorsement, but we need a third party to say, yes, I do know this organisation. I can't possibly know every community group in Scotland, and I need to work with third parties, and SCCAN is obviously absolutely best positioned to provide me with that information. So think of SCCAN as your access to the funding. Next, please, Katrina. So what's covered? It's really a no-brainer. It covers the expenses of one group visiting another. The threshold is 750. Now, I know one of the people participating today is from Shetland, and so if you come from the Highlands or the Islands, or you have a long distance to travel for whatever reason, we're quite flexible around that 750. But I have to say, you know, we do look at the budgets. I make sure that they're proportionate. In other words, not too much money has gone on travel and not enough money on something else. So it covers what you'd expect. It covers mileage, it covers accommodation if that's required, and it covers subsistence. It also includes a host fee to the organisation. And this is in recognition that the hosting organisation is just a cost for them. It's a resource cost, and it's also an opportunity cost. They could be doing something else with that time. It could be filling in a grant form, for instance. And it also ensures, and it's actually a host organisation that told me that if they're paid a host fee, then they feel obliged to actually give you a really good experience. So you're going to get more than a cup of coffee and a walk round. It doesn't have to be £300. It's up to you to negotiate it. But this is actually quite an important part. The contract is between the visitor and the host. We pay the visitor the grant, which includes the host fee, and it's up to the visitor to pay the host fee. So the contract with a small c is between these two organisations. A lot of people say to me, aren't you paying the host fee? No, this has nothing to do with us. This is to do with the visiting organisation who has identified the host organisation as being someone they want to visit. So that whole contracting relationship is between the two of them. Another slide, please, Katrina. Mm-hmm. If there is more than one group, sometimes groups get together and they make a party of it, hire a minibus, etc. We could raise the host fee to accommodate that, but there's more to that day than just hosting one organisation. We do fund study visits that are out with Scotland, but within the United Kingdom. That's quite important. But you'd have to really persuade me that there's nothing in Scotland that that you can find that's equal to wherever you want to go in England or in Northern Ireland. I said in the earlier part of my presentation that some of the relationships formed, the networking relationships, actually went on beyond the one-off visit. So built into the program is an opportunity for mentoring, which really takes that a step forward. So if, as a visiting organisation, you think there's some bit of this, some technical bit of this, some project part of this, that we would like to get more information from, or more help, or more support, there is opportunity for a time-limited and flexible mentoring relationship coming out of that visit. It's got to be with the host organisation. It can't just decide to get mentoring from somewhere else. So it has to be with the host organisation. It has to be time-limited. You know, I don't want something that goes on for, you know, like 2 years of mentoring. It's not personal development or organisational development. It has to be specific to do with a particular project or part of what you're interested in. But it is a good bolt-on. Not too many people take up that opportunity. I think because it requires a little bit more thinking, a little more strategic thinking perhaps. But the mentoring is very flexible. It can be face-to-face, it can be by phone, it can be by web, what we're doing at the moment. But you should bear in mind there is this opportunity to bolt on a mentoring program after the visit. Next slide, please. What it won't fund, this is quite important because people do constantly come to me and say, oh, will you fund this, that and the other? We won't fund delegate fees for conferences, seminars or workshops, nor travel to events or the hosting of events or training courses, either delivery or attendance. And the best way of thinking about this is we won't fund attendance at or delivery of an event that's already pre-planned, already in the schedule, already in the program, already in people's calendars. Delegate fees, we could actually just spend all our funds on delegate fees, you know, to conferences. So that would eat up our whole budget. It's very much about peer-to-peer learning, very much tailor-made to the visiting party. It's not about attending any event that's already in the schedule, in the calendar. Next slide, please. So how does it work? I always stress that it is very proportionate to the whole activity. So it's an easy experience. It's an easy administration. There's an application form which is available on the website, but it's also available for SCAN, and the applicant fills it in. They send it to SCAN, and SCAN will verify and endorse the application for its members. This isn't particularly quality assurance. What it is, again, as I said, it's really for SCAN to say, I know this organisation, they're a bona fide organisation. It's not a man with a laptop in his attic filling in the form. I need to know it's a proper organisation, it's a community organisation, and it's a known organisation. When it comes to me, I will approve the application. In other words, make sure it's not any of these things that we weren't going to fund. I always look at the budget to see what the bottom line is. Sometimes I'll have a conversation with the applicant about the budget, not often, but if I think it's disproportionate, or I think there's cheaper accommodation in Manchester, as I had a conversation quite recently. We then just send an offer letter saying, really echoing the application form, saying, this is what you said you were going to do, this is the fund that you've asked for. And we also send a grant acceptance form, which just has to be completed and returned. And that is just a signature saying, yes, we are going to do what we said we were going to do for this amount of the grant. And it also gives us, because we really need this, the banking details so that we can pay grant. And a nice bit of this program is that you can decide as the applicant whether you want the grant paid to you up front before you go on the learning visit, and that might help with cash flow, so you're not paying out before you've got the money in, or you could ask for the money afterwards when you're more sure of what your costs are going to be. So the choice is completely up to you, so it's very flexible that way. I've headed up quite a number of small voluntary organisations, and I know that cash flow can be an issue, and that's why we let that choice be available to you. Next page, please. Again, this is what I've just discussed, that we sign out, take an offer form and acceptance form. And I just want to reiterate, because people do find this difficult to understand, the funding includes the host fee organisation, and it is the responsibility for the organisations to pay the host fee. In terms of what I need to see after the visit, I do need to see evidence of spend. That can be receipts, it can be invoices, it even can be an email confirmation. And this also applies to the host fee. I just need to, I joke about this, but I just need to be sure that, you know, you didn't go to Paris for the weekend. I need to see evidence that you spent the money on what you said you were going to spend it on. There's also a survey monitoring, a survey monkey monitoring form that needs to be completed. Again, it's quite simple, but it just gives us information back, how the visit went, what was important. Did you meet your learning objectives or did you not? It's useful for us to know these sorts of things. Also, where are most of our applicants coming from? which ones of SCA network organisations are using the community learning exchange the most. So it just gives us that kind of data, which is useful to us, very useful to us when we need to apply to the Scottish Government for more funding. And I want to stress this, the paperwork is not arduous. I know that small community groups do not have the resources to fill in complicated funding forms, funding application forms. So I just want to stress that. Very much tailored to small organisations. So when you're thinking about who you want to visit, think about, is the best practice within the community, climate action community sector that you need to learn about? Is somebody doing a project and you want that advice that's going to prevent you going down the wrong road? Is there expertise? Also think about outside the sector. So there may be organisations outside the sector, again, these community groups that you think you could learn from. Do you know of, or are you a startup or embryonic organisation which could learn from more established operations? Again, to follow Katharina's theme, it's about not making errors or mistakes. Somebody else has been on that road before you and can say, actually, don't go down that road. We've done that road. It was a waste of time. Do this, do that. I have to say our host organisations, from the feedback we get, have been incredibly honest and very generous with their information. Much more honest and generous than I thought they were going to be, actually. And so you can learn. They're not shy of saying, we would advise you not to do that, or we did that and it didn't work for us. So it's a good way of preventing the kind of errors that you might make without this kind of advice. Next slide. This is the feedback, and of course I'm going to say to you that it's a very successful program of funding and that people really love it. But actually, it is, because it's a no-brainer, it's a very simple proposition. People do find it very useful. And you hear things like, the team, the host organization were very welcoming and helpful. A great form, easy to complete. This is what I was telling you, that it's the admin is very easy. Again, host organization was open and honest about timescales, difficulties, and benefits of this joint venture. Whatever they were going to see, it's obviously a joint venture. Helpful and insightful. One of the strongest bits of feedback I've had is this is much better than training, in other words, than formal training. A brilliant process, easily followed. I can't stress enough that it is a simple operation and the administration is very lightweight. Also, by the way, in case you want to, or somebody wants to visit you, it's a two-way thing. Host organizations also learn from the visiting organizations. So it's often a two-way exchange of information and knowledge. Next, I think this might be the last one, Katharina.
Yes, it is.
Yes. It's very important. You can download from the Community Learning Exchange website both the guidance information, which is basically what I've just told you, and also the form. And also, Katharina is your first port of call in terms of putting in your application. So that's me. I was going to say you could stop me at any time to ask a question, but please feel free to. I don't know, Katharina, if you want questions first or your experiences from your other two speakers.
Well, I would say let's go and see how this all works in practice. And if anyone has any questions, you can either pop them in the chat window or just note them down on the side and then just basically ask them when we finished with the testimonies. Thank you so much for that, Amanda. It's a really, really nice presentation to just understand a little bit more about the process of how the community learning exchange works in practice. But now, because this is still quite theoretical, I thought it'd be nice to share some real life experiences with you all. So to actually, hear it from the horse's mouth, to see how it really has worked for people in practice. So we've invited Iiain, Stewart from the Edinburgh Interfaith Association. I would ask to first perhaps just give your feedback on how did you experience the community learning exchange? Like, why did you decide to apply in the first place? How did you hear about it in the first place? And what was your experience? Why did you want to do it? And what did you get out of it? If you could just share that with us, that would be really great.
Great. Well, thank you for the chance to talk to everyone. I think there are many people around the table or around the computers who are much more experienced in this whole area of climate change than we are. I work for the Edinburgh Interfaith Association, which in many ways is a collection of different faith communities, and we work together with many projects for a common concern. And climate change has just come at the top of the agenda for many reasons. Faith communities are very concerned about the plight of the climate, but many don't know how to approach it. And so I was approached by several faith communities to say we need to do something to address climate change. What can we do? And we had a series of discussions. First of all, we had David Somerville, who you'll know very well from as a climate sustainability advisor, etc. And he helped us as faith communities to discuss the issue. What was it that we as communities wanted to do? What changes could we make? We came to the conclusion that we really needed to improve climate literacy across all faith community members, and we needed to identify realistic projects that we could do that would bring about behavioural changes that were necessary. And we came to the conclusion that, you know, projects that meant reductions in carbon usage and emissions were maybe things that we could help our individuals and communities to do. And I think it was probably David who put us on to thinking about applying for the exchange. It was a very simple process. Just reiterating what Amanda said, the form was very simple to fill in, didn't take very long. It's quite a straightforward process. I think you could probably do the application in quite a short time. And then I think obviously for some people as community organisations, you're trying to, I appreciate what Amanda was saying about maybe you can learn from other groups outside the sector, but I think for us as a organisation working kind of a grassroots community, we were looking for a project who were also a grassroots organisation. A lot of our members are connecting with BME communities as well, so we wanted to look at a climate project that was being funded that also had a similar or a wide client base to what we had. So we were lucky enough to find an equality organisation that had a really good project that we knew was quite successful, and was achieving some of the aims that I think that we wanted to do. But we had no idea how really a climate change project works. So it was fantastic to actually go and meet, you know, someone who's actually operating one of these projects and to ask what are the challenges, what are the important things to know about. And he, you know, from our meeting, they really stressed the importance of having strong grassroots connections, of partnership working, and also thinking of practical things about staffing. We'd already talked that for some of us with small resources, it's a bit daunting maybe to take on a big climate project. So it was really important to be realistic and learn about setting attainable targets, for example, and also building in time for also admin, not realising that maybe you need admin support for some of the things. So there was a lot of really kind of practical advice that maybe made us reassured and a lot more confident that actually we could take a project on, but also to be realistic about what we would need to do that and what support we would need to bring that about. Is that helpful? I'm happy to take questions because obviously I'll probably just rattle on here.
Great, thanks so much for that. Maybe Iiain, could you just specify, like, because you said you visited the SCS didn't you?
Yeah,
so
but Central Scotland Regional Equality, and actually we live in the I personally live in the area, so I'm aware of a lot of the work that they did. So we went through the intended climate reduction ourselves in terms of the practical measures that we could do to sort of cut on our electricity use and energy usage. So I've been a little bit individually experienced of what they've done.
Can I maybe just quickly ask to just complete what you said? How did you actually find out about them, or how did you how did you find your host part organization? Basically, how did you know that they were the ones for you?
I'm trying to think of how. I mean, I was probably aware of that organisation through other equality community work that I do myself, so I was aware that they had a project. But I think you're required to do a little bit of research yourself. You're trying to find comparable organisations to yourself, or if you're a community organisation or a charitable organisation, just because we were aware of some of the issues that we might have is how do we include communities who might normally not engage in climate change, for example. So we have some South Asian communities, for example, Indian communities and other communities that we work with who haven't really been that involved in some of the climate projects. So this organisation had very successfully got on board organisations from across communities. I thought that was really helpful.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Iiain. Maybe if you've got any questions to everyone, just note them down and we'll do a proper round of questions just after the next sharing of experience. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, Iiain, from the Edinburgh Interfaith Association. Can I ask Philip, can you, from Sustaining Dunbar, can you please just share what you did and why you did what you did with Sustaining Dunbar and the Community Learning Exchange? Like, why did you choose to go for it, and what was the purpose of it?
Sure. Yes, thank you very much, Katharina. Just to start off by saying I'm delighted to be part of this online call, which I hope will be the first of many online meetings for SCAN members, because we're desperate to find ways to enable our members to network together better and to learn from each other. And whilst online meeting isn't as good as meeting in the flesh, it can be very helpful. But yeah, the Community Learning Exchange, I think, is a brilliant opportunity for our members to get together and learn from each other. So yeah, just a bit of background. Sustaining Dunbar is an organisation that's been going nearly 12 years now, actually. We're a community development trust, but we're also part of the global transition movement. And there's about a dozen or so members of SCAN that are also part of the transition movement. And last year, a bunch of those Transition Scotland members were keen to get together to discuss what doing transition meant for them. So I offered to host a meeting in Dunbar as an opportunity for those Transition Scotland members of SCAN to get together and to learn from our experience in Dunbar in particular. So we actually organised it as a weekend. Some people came on the Friday evening when we anyway were having one of our regular Sustaining Dunbar sort of members meetings, sort of social evenings, and a talk from another local organisation, which on that evening was actually about setting up plastic-free status in Dunbar. As a talk by Surfers Against Sewage, I think it was. And then the next day, we got together in the local community centre. venue hire was all paid for by the Community Learning Exchange, which was very helpful, and that also paid for putting on some catering at lunchtime, which we organised from a local social enterprise which runs the cafe in the community centre. So the morning was an opportunity for us to share experience, for me to tell a bit more about the ups and downs of developing climate action projects in Dunbar over the past decade or so, and for other people to share their experiences. And then in the afternoon, we had a series of visits around different projects in Dunbar, some of which were sort of directly connected to work we've done in the past, and other projects which we just have a close connection with. So, for example, we visited the Zero Waste Reuse Hub, which is a legacy project from our Zero Waste Town initiative, which is a large sort of part of a former supermarket. It's a large reuse store which sells on items which have been diverted from landfill, basically. And then we visited another social enterprise which has restored a lot of the backlands behind the high street, and does a lot of training with young people, particularly young people who don't have any destination after school. And yeah, then I'd arranged that people who needed to stay over were hosted by members of Sustaining Dunbar on a sort of couch surfing basis. So we had a social evening on the Saturday, and then we got together again on the Sunday to discuss matters of common interest. So yes, I would encourage anybody to take advantage of the Community Learning Exchange, basically, because I think you can't really beat sharing learning and experience between community projects. So yeah, I think that's probably enough from me for now.
Thanks so much, Philip. That's really useful. So I think we chose those two testimonies because we just wanted to show you also how the objectives of an exchange visit can be very different. So from what Philip was saying, you know, it was really much more about networking, getting people together and getting different organizations come together and meet each other, and then in the hope of developing common activities together, or just exchanging experience on a formal or more informal level as well. Whereas for the Edinburgh Interfaith Association, from what Iiain was saying, you know, it was really much more about, okay, we want to do a climate change project. We've got our community who is really interested in this topic, and we want to do something as the Edinburgh Interfaith Association on the topic of climate change, and we would like to apply for a grant project that finances such an activity. But we have a limited experience with it, and so how can we do it best? So it's really two quite different objectives. You know, one is about, you know, let's apply for a concrete project and let's learn from the best, basically, from those that have already been there. And the other one is more about let's network and let's expand our remit in terms of who we know and who we work with. So I think it's an interesting, two different, very different and interesting examples of what you can do with a community learning exchange. And I hope that, you know, that has given you a little bit of an insight into what you can do with it, with that program. So with that, I think I'll be happy to, you know, just open the floor to everyone, and everyone who's here today on the call, and just ask any questions you have, or, you know, make any comments and that you would like to make on the presentations, on the testimonies that we've had here today. I have a first question from Phil that he's put in the chat, which I don't know, Phil, you're here, aren't you? So I mean, I'm happy you can just share it orally as well, rather than just me reading it off, because it's much more fun if you hear people speaking.
Thank you very much, Katrina. I was just asking, how do you decide how much to pay the organisation? Is that like a £300 fee for every organisation, or is there a negotiation in that? What's the...
Okay, I'm going to bat it back to you. It is actually a negotiation, and some organisations actually don't take a host fee. Some will say, we don't mind, but we run a cafeteria, will you have your lunch here? And some, they'll take a half day. Also, it depends. Are you going for the full day? Are you going for the half day? So I don't want to bat it back to you, but it is actually between you and the host. it's important, and in the guidance, talking about avoiding errors, even there's an opportunity to avoid an error here. It is important that you actually identify your host fee and actually talk to them before you do the application. I've had one example of somebody who went to a host and then realized the visiting organization was actually further along in the journey than the host organization. So it's wise to research your host organization and be in contact with them and have that conversation with them. So that's really the main thing. A lot of people actually think that I have a prescribed list of approved host organizations, and I don't, because I would not I do not have the knowledge, experience, or anything else to say who you should visit as a host. I would never ever do that. That's your business. What you want to achieve, it's all to do with you. But it's quite interesting how people do get in touch with me and say, don't you have a list of approved organizations? So I wouldn't be as arrogant as to decide who you should go and see. So I'm sorry I'm not giving a perfect answer to that, but it is part of that conversation with your host organization.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you very much for that. I do have a secondary question.
Yeah.
And it's a theoretical. So if I wish to hire a minibus and take a group of my volunteers to, say, multiple community gardens,
yeah,
would that be, so from the funding point of view, it's 45 pence a mile, or was it just be for the van hire? And then
the van hire, if it's more economical I think it's probably in our guidance to hire a van, minivan, that's fine. It's also more cost, from my point of view, the bottom line is more cost effective if there's more than one person going. So I would like that. And if you were going to more than one host, that would be good. You might have to spread your host fee around them, but that would be good as well. I'd appreciate that. On the other hand, I did, and it's interesting you're talking about gardens, I did have somebody who wanted to go and visit 12 different gardens over, I don't know, weeks or something. And I said, you know, you're never going to remember what happened at the first garden by the time you get to the 12th garden. So really, as you can imagine, there's an optimum number of visits you should make.
Yeah, I was thinking 2, maybe 3, but possibly
2, 3, that's fine. 12 is a bit, you know,
pushing it
over the top.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for answering that question. That's really helpful.
So you're thinking, Phil, of do you want to maybe, I don't know if you want to share your idea of what you would like to do, and maybe give a shout to whoever is here on the call. Perhaps people have got an idea of how they can help out, or if you could even set up something together.
Sure. I mean, we're setting up a community garden in Iiain Hill in Cumbernauld, so it's quite important. It's from the ground. It's grassroots. We've identified the land, but we've still talking with the local authority about whether we can or cannot have it and what the terms of lease are and everything else like that. So we're still at very, very late stages. We've identified volunteers, but we're not really formed up as such yet, because we do have a host organisation, the Open Hill Regeneration Forum, who are keen to keep it within. But we have the opportunity to break away if we need to from the funding and political thing that's going on. So we're looking at going to a couple of different community gardens. There's a really, really good one in Stirling, Braehead Community Garden, which is all singing, all dancing. Very, very expensive though. It's significantly expensive, and I can imagine the funding to get that garden would be really, really difficult, particularly in modern day and times. And then we're looking at sort of smaller, sort of allotmenty type places that require possibly less financial input. So it's kind of like get a balance. It's looking for the balance. That's what we're looking for.
If I can interject here back to host organisations, SCCAN, again, I don't want to bat this back to SCCAN, but SCCAN may be able to give you advice for organisations with potential visitors if they have an idea of what they want to learn. Yeah. SCCAN might be able to say, these are organisations that we know to be down that journey or whatever. Not particularly to you, Phil, but just generally. The network organisation might have some suggestions as they have an overview of their membership.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Amanda. Indeed, there was these two things I wanted to mention. We have, of course, other SCCAN members that are already, operate in community gardens, so be very happy to put you in touch with them. And also I wanted to draw your attention to our next month's Tuesdays for Climate online event, which will deal with exactly that, with how to set up a community garden. So we will talk about that topic in more detail at next month's session, which is taking place on the 1st of October. So the first Tuesday of the month, always at the same time, so 1 to 2 p.m. So if you want to join that call as well, Phil, that might be helpful for you in your particular case because of the topic that you're interested in for community gardens. So of course everyone else is very welcome to join that as well, but I thought I'd just mention that in this context.
Yeah, I'm actually booked onto that one already, so yeah.
Ah, well done. There you go. Those are the proactive people of this world.
So use the opportunity to point out as well that, I mean, the Learning Exchange just provides an opportunity to visit members of other member networks of the Scottish Community Alliance as well. So you might want to look at examples, the Federation of City Farms and Gardens, for example, or the Scottish Allotments, whatever, SAGs, whatever that is.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Have you got any other questions from any of the participants here on the call? Does anyone have any project ideas that they might want to share, or any, can we do this with a community learning exchange, or just any general questions about, we've got a community organisation and we are stuck with something, what can we do? Something very noisy somewhere.
Sounds fun.
The other option is that SCCAN itself, a bit as Philip has described, but SCCAN itself could take a group of its members on visits. They could be an applicant themselves, advertise visits, hire a minivan and take people around. I mean, a lot of our networks have done that, so that's a possibility as well. If you've got the energy, Katerina.
Absolutely. Sure, be happy to do that. Just any questions you have, just just let me know. I'll have, in the meantime, I would have a question to Amanda just about the mentoring that you mentioned earlier on, because I think it merits a little bit more of an explanation. And I think it's also a nice opportunity, which from what I understand, can happen as a follow-up to the community learning exchange, which is another, well, from what I understand, informal way of getting more support. But can you just sort of explain a little bit more in detail, how does the mentoring work, and what are the criteria for applying? Is there any fee involved as well? How does it work, basically? Just a few more details about that.
There is an application form which whoever wants to be mentored fills in, and I will look at it, and yeah, generally that looks okay to me. I then encourage both parties to get together by telephone or email and discuss what they're going to do, what the objective is, how many days it might be, will it be face-to-face, will it be by telephone, will it be by email, and that's discussed. And then I encourage the two parties to draw up an agreement which puts all these items in place, because it requires this. My experience of life is that this requires an agreement which is signed off. There's also a time scale in that agreement as well. So by that time, the mentoring will have finished. It might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, it might be a year, but there's got to be a timeline to it. And when both parties have signed it off, they send me a copy, email me a copy, and I lodge that, I file that. The finance arrangement is, and it's generally around £750, and that finance is usually to do with a day rate for the mentor. But I actually send the grant to the person being mentored, in other words, to the applicant. And again, it's up to them to pay their mentor. But I will send them the money or send them the grant, and I'll also ask for them to sign again a form that says, yes, I accept this grant and I agree that we will be doing that as per the agreement dated so and so. So it's a little bit more complicated than the community learning exchange. I take perhaps a larger part in it in terms of making sure. Sometimes I've written the agreement myself with the help of two parties because they felt unable to do it. Other people have been fine with doing it. So that's really how it works. It's a little bit more complex because it's actually a bit more of a complex operation. But we've had quite a number of very successful mentorings. So it does work, but it's very important to pin it down what both parties have agreed to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thanks so much for explaining that a bit more detail, because I think it might even be worth Amanda to put out a bit more information about the mentoring somewhere on the web, and just for people to be more aware of it, because I think it's a great opportunity, because indeed you can get a more personal relationship with with your partner organization and one or several people that you deal with there. So I think that can be helpful, especially if you start up an organization and you're still quite new to something. And from what I've heard today, we've had a few people here that are in this situation, like Terry, who wants to set up a tool library, and also Phil, what you've been saying about the community garden. So, I think these are great opportunities that you can take up and that help you to just get going with your new activities. And it's really about, having somebody who's been there before and who is benevolent enough to also want to share their experience with you, which is not always easy to find in this world, because everyone's busy with their own stuff. But if you manage to get like an agreement, a contract, a formal contract with somebody in place, and that is government funded, well, hello, bingo, So it's perfect. I think it's a really great opportunity. If there's one more question, Philip, you want to say something?
Yeah, it wasn't a question, actually. It was just a point of information. Just to bear in mind that the Climate Challenge Fund has development grants of up to £500 that you can apply for. So that could be used on top of a community learning exchange, or sort of to add to complement a community learning exchange to develop some sort of community-led climate action idea. So that's something to bear in mind as well. It could greatly strengthen an application to the CCF if you can show that you've learned from the experience of another successful project. So just to mention that.
Yeah, great. Well, we're almost at 2 o'clock, so if there's one more burning question or comment, then I'll be happy to take that in.
If I can say something quickly, it's Iiain here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for running something like this online, because being based up in Shetland, we're quite isolated and we very rarely get to chip in and hear from some of the projects to us. So we're really grateful for this kind of setup. It really helps us to connect with the groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Iiain. Thank you so much for saying that, to be honest, because, when we were thinking of these online event series, we were thinking of exactly people like you that are up in Shetlands, up in Orkney, up in, wherever the far out, the Isles of Scotland, or the Highlands and Islands, all around the areas that are a little bit less close to the central belt, which is where a lot of events are happening. And we've been really thinking, how can we get out to you guys more and involve you more? Because obviously, there are some geographical difficulties, to logistic difficulties, or to get to each other when there's events happening that that are physical events. So I'm glad that you were able to hear about this event and take part in it, because it's exactly for people like you that are not able to travel to Edinburgh or Glasgow all the time for any kind of meeting. So thanks so much for joining us, Iiain, and being here.
Thank you.
And so if does anyone else have another question? Otherwise, we're already at 2 o'clock here, so I would then otherwise close this call today. So I don't see any hands rising or anyone coming up. So I'll just use this opportunity to say thank you to everyone who's taken part in this very first Tuesdays for Climate online event. And thank you so much to all our speakers, Amanda, Philip, and Iiain, to share their experience and knowledge about how community organizations can, you know, take up tools such as the Community Learning Exchange, and how they have taken it up indeed, and how it's been useful for them. So thanks so much for sharing that. I hope that everyone who's been on the calls found this useful. If you have any other follow-up questions or comments, just drop me a line at info@scottishcommunitiescan.org.uk, and you can download the Community Learning Exchange form as well on the on our website. I'll send the link round in just a second, and actually I'll send it out in an email. It's probably easier. It's going to be easier for everyone to actually keep hold of it. So thanks everyone for joining this, and let's have a wonderful rest of a Tuesday afternoon, and hopefully see you again next month on the 1st of October when we talk about how to set up a community garden. So Phil, we'll probably see you there, and some different faces. So thanks a lot for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, cheers.
Bye.